Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Oh, hi.
I thought we had to do the clap in.
I
thought we were gonna clap in.
This is a special one. This is Drinking Bros, aka Launch Code, aka special episode.
Yeah, it's a special episode with a special guest. I think that for a lot of us, we've been listeners of Rogan's podcast for a long time. We've been fans of our guest's brand and a lot of things that he's done. So I know I'm personally excited to dive into this, and I think that it's going to be fucking awesome.
Let's have some fun.
So, without further ado, who do we have on the show today?
That voice you're hearing over there is none other than Mr. Aubrey Marcus.
Aubrey Marcus. So I think that first thing for our listeners is, who is Aubrey Marcus? In the basic black and white form before we get into any existential, philosophical aspects of it.
How are you going to get me to describe myself without existential?
You can.
Shit. What the fuck? You're already.
I am a man. I live here.
I'm a man of principle
man.
and fitness.
I'm just someone who's, gone after trying to figure things out, namely and foremost myself. And that's been, kind of trying to understand who I am, what I'm here for, why I'm here, and solve those big puzzles. And that's taken me into the literature, into the great religions, into personal experience, into all kinds of practices. And it's ultimately allowed me to discover a bunch of tools, which I scuttled into Onnit as far as for the human body and the human mind, and then ended up able to write that book, Own the Day, Own Your Life, and put a lot of those practices in there, and then other things that will come in other books and other podcasts. But it's really just trying to figure shit out, man.
Trying to figure shit out. I think that's the title of this episode. Is
Trying to figure
shit out.
It's the title of my life.
That's the fucking title of life.
Oh,
yeah, it's like life.
You just
Figure
stole my
this shit
autobiography
out.
and made it the title of your podcast, but that's cool.
Which,
whatever.
Own the Day, your book is a bestseller as well, right?
Yeah, New York
Congrats.
Times bestseller. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome.
It's gone really well.
We were in a process to write a book, but the DoD doesn't want to approve mine, so I've been sitting on a written book.
What do
for
they
a
have
year.
to do with books?
That's what I'm saying. But
They own a piece of your soul.
they do. The
and your
military
life.
likes to take that soul, but that's awesome. So you have more books in the works or in the
For
future?
sure, for sure. I mean, Own the Day, Own Your Life is like a strategy and a plan to attack a day so that'll set you up repeatedly for like an optimized life. But it's really a lot about the human body, touches on the human mind and some mindset practices. But there's a lot farther we can go with the human mind, and a lot farther you can go with the human heart, and a lot farther you can go with building community and tribe. And I think that's one thing, on the latter, that military is one of the few places where you get that sense of brotherhood. Maybe in sports teams, but those are usually temporary for most of us, and even for a professional, you're as likely to get traded as anything. So, it's really interesting that there's only a few people who get to experience that type of brotherhood that I think is part of our innate nature. So it's all kind of building towards that. Own the day, own your life, all the practices for the human body, and some of them for mindset, and then to the mind, and then to the heart and relationships, and then to the community.
That's a really good point. I mean, I feel like that's why I have so much usually in line with fighters and guys that are heavily into competitive working out, because it's like that tribal mentality where you kind of surround yourself with a team, and the collective is where the success is found. It's not necessarily the individual, but it's the individual's ability to be the best they are themselves, but with the collaborative effort. And it's been cool because when we work with MMA fighters and all these other crazy motherfuckers just experiencing and living life, it's cool as shit.
Well, he's like he just kind of like opened my eyes up to the fact that, somebody that didn't go into the military or didn't play college sports or do something like that, when you go into the workforce, how do you find your crowd?
Yeah.
Because it's difficult.
Yeah.
You can't
And
go up
you-
and survey
Well, the
everybody.
environment,
And your
yeah.
crowd and your tribe is a different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your crowd might be people like, oh yeah, I can hang with that person. Yeah. But do you trust them? Would you share everything with them? Would you fight and die for them? Like that, those level bonds, usually maybe that's your wife, and that's pretty much it. And maybe that's your best friend. But it's not this real sense of community that I think we're supposed to feel like we're supposed to stand out in the front lines when the attackers are coming and protect the village, because we love the fucking village, like we love our people. And it's just a weird place that we're in, where we have kind of good friends and kind of relationships that are all right, but I think we're missing that. And I think there's like a deep loneliness that a lot of us feel. And I think probably you get it from a lot of operators who it's hell when they're out there in some, foreign country and they're on deployment, but they're also the happiest because they're with their brothers and they feel like I'm part of something that's meaningful, and then they get back home, they're like, fuck, where are my fucking brothers at? Where's my tribe at? And it's a weird place. And I think there's ways that and Sebastian Junger talks about that in his book Tribe. But I think there's ways that you can cultivate that intentionally, beyond, entering the military, and just intentionally through ritual, through practice, through putting yourself through mutual hardships, whether it's super hard workouts or super hard hike or Ironmans or however you want to do it, test yourself. And I think that's a big part of it. And then form those kind of bonds. And that's part of the process that I'm in now with a lot of my closest friends.
Well, when did this start, man? Like, have you always kind of felt a gap, and have you been searching for a tribe, and has that led you to this, or is this something that started?
Yeah, I think it's all part of self-reflection, right? Like, and at a certain point you realize, well, first step, I can't stop my mind from running a million places. How do I quiet that motherfucker down? Like that's step one. And like step two, my body feels really good some days, really horrible some days. How do I get that in the right alignment? And then you start going deeper and deeper. And then number three is like, man, I'm having trouble receiving and giving love to the capability that I ultimately want to. What's blocking me there? What are the problems there? And then, fuck, I still feel kind of lonely, even though I'm surrounded by people. Why do I still feel lonely, even though I'm surrounded by people? And it's just kind of the honest asking of those questions that lead me to try and find like sturdy solutions that I can fucking slap around a little bit and they don't go running away because they're, tinfoil, like real strong steel solutions to these different problems.
So have you been doing this, from the time that you can remember? Is this something that's in the last decade? Where did you kind of turn the corner and start this? I guess it's more introspective search for, is it meaning, or how would you define it?
I would say it all picks up momentum because when you start to have success, when you realize that the method, it's like almost like my method has been validated because I've been able to make progress, then you apply the method more universally. So maybe it was a little bit slower at first and there's longer periods of fucking hopelessness where it's just like, nothing I'm doing is working, whatever. This is all, I don't have any solutions. I'm not going to find any solutions. And so I would go stretches where I would stop asking questions, stop looking for answers. And then eventually I would find answers. And now that I've been more comfortable and familiar with the answer finding process, the implementation process, the discipline to keep to a regimen like I put out in Own the Day, like that's accelerated the process, I think. And now, so I'm just hunting. I'm hunting problems. I'm hunting issues that I have. I'm hunting insecurities. I'm hunting fear.
Have you sort of segmented like everything as to where, life, love, your tribe, everything like that, where you're solving them all at once trying to, or are you picking a few that you're diving deep in first? Are there any that you've checked off and all right, I've got that solution?
No, I don't have any solutions fully yet. I'm always still working. It's whatever hurts the worst at the moment. It's like triage method. Like, where am I bleeding the most? Like, where is the pain coming from at this point? I mean, and some of it is coming from inspiration and the desire I see something in another person and I see something elsewhere. But a lot of this is just like, all right, where do I feel the least whole? All right, well, let's go there now. Where do I feel the most fear? Let's go there now and explore that.
That's why I've looked at in my life creating relationships that have people that are better than me, because I consistently try to find the attributes that I look at them and go, wow, that is a very attractive and appealing quality. I want that, and how do I get it? And then you kind of have to internalize that and figure out why the fuck you're not as good as them. And it's kind of a very challenging thing. You kind of just got to slash away your ego, because the ego is like that construct, at least in me, that tells me like, oh, well, it's a fucking makes excuses for me all the time. I'm like trying to reverse it.
Because the ego already wants to be better than everybody else. 100%. Right? So it can't accept the fact that it needs
stubborn,
to grow. It's
right?
stubborn.
It's stubborn as shit.
Stupid.
It's super stupid.
It's stupid.
Because you literally, it's like making excuses like, oh, well, I could. And then I'm like trying to be the guy now where it's like, if I want something, I make the excuse how to get it. And undeniably that also is associated with like being uncomfortable. And we always like to be comfortable. So seeking to be uncomfortable is very challenging, especially when you've created a lifestyle where you seek comfort consistently in my life. Like, I have a house that I can go to. I have this like nice shower. I have a wife, and it's just kind of fucking easy. And you fall into that kind of mundane practice. You kind of break out of it.
You know what I realized today is funny, because I was in the car, literally driving. You guys saw me pull up, and I'm thinking, and I've been in kind of like a little funk in the last like 24 hours or so. And I think what I realized, I'm like, where the fuck is this coming from? And I'm like, oh, I'm really comfortable right now, and I'm super uncomfortable with how comfortable I am. It's like the book's a huge success.
Nothing's
the
on
company's
fire.
doing well. Yeah, my relationships are all good. My friendships are good. Like, I don't have any crises to solve. You know, my health is all right. I'm like, fuck.
It scares you.
I
You're
don't-
waiting
I-
for what's
like,
next.
Well, it's crazy. One of our close friends, Tyler Gray, he did a doc on that. Was that which I love destroys me, and it's essentially calling it lack of PTS, post-traumatic stress, and it's saying that you're so comfortable in a stressful environment where everything's on fire. You're playing fix, and then you get out of that environment where everything's just kind of easy, and you're so empty inside because you're like, I want to fucking fix shit. I want to go out there and solve problems. And for that active mind that is so used to doing that, the second you're placed in that comfortable environment, especially I've had issues with it where I'm like, fuck this, I hate this. I used to ruin relationships for that. I'd be dating the nicest girl and I just fuck it up. I'd go cheat on her. I'd do whatever the case was because like, I don't like it. I feel too normal.
Yeah, let's throw it all up in the air and have to dodge
Set it on
the
fire.
raindrops of glass that are coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is the entrepreneurial journey, right? Where you, especially a guy that's been successful, and obviously you have, when you start, you're just digging. Like, that's the only thing and I'm equating it to my own experience, where the only thing I can think about is putting this shovel in the ground 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is it. That's the only thing I can focus on. There's no time to focus on yourself, because the only thing you can focus on is your business. So I guess with more success might come a little bit more time for, okay, now I can develop and work on some things other than, you know, is my fulfillment going to be on fire, or am I fucking going to tape 1,000 boxes tonight because I have to in order to get them out? Is that part of it, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of it, and there's also a part of it that's, you know, the ego, for however stupid it is, it's a really strong motivator, you know, because you're trying to show yourself that you're worthy, and you're trying to show the world that you're good enough, and you're trying to, you know, get things to show off and raise your sexual status or whatever, you know, social status or whatever. And then, you know, you keep doing enough work to collapse the ego, and then all of that stuff, you're like, yeah, I could. That would be nice. It would be more comfortable if I didn't have to fly private. But
well, it's good I do have the ego, because when I walked into the Onnit facility, there's just a bunch of hot dudes walking around with their shirts off, and I'm like, fuck, man, I need to get back in those two-a-days because I'm not looking
so,
like
all right,
these tan
so that's
motherfuckers.
good. So that's, I mean, that is part of like a motivating factor, and I think, you know, for me, that's not really there. What really has to motivate me now is just really genuine service, like helping people. And for me to really feel that call to service, I need to be really open myself and connecting with people, because you're not going to be of service to people unless you're really open to love them. So I think for me, it's just whenever I feel kind of tired, it's really because I don't love people enough at the moment right then. I'm not connecting with them enough. I'm not caring enough about them. So if I care enough about them, then I'm fucking fired up. Then I'm fired up to write my next book. I'm fired up to write my next blog, or book my next podcast guest, or create the next new product. But it really comes from like really loving people.
Well, I think everybody's motivated by purpose. I truly believe that. Is that, do you feel that that's your main purpose in life, is just relationships and love? And that's kind of...
Yeah, man, I do. I think, you know, I feel like I'm here to enjoy myself, of course. You know, I think you have to include that. And at the same time, affect as much positive change on human consciousness as I possibly can. And that's why, you know, when it comes to sharing my own struggles and difficulties and challenges, like, I love sharing that stuff because I know it's helpful. And so that's part of my purpose. And that purpose overrides any kind of feeling of insecurity or shyness about anything that's going on in my personal life, because I'm very clear that my purpose is to positively affect human consciousness.
I absolutely love that. It's because it's just like, yeah, you can have all the money in the world. You know, I've had like the little fame piece. I've had some money, and it's just like, no matter where you're at, you're kind of empty unless you have that purpose of, okay, I'm positively benefiting someone else. And sometimes you have to be super open with your personal endeavors. And I've dealt with that myself, where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be fucking open and honest that I fucked up bad, or I made a bad decision. I went the wrong path. Because if you're open and honest about it, and actually influence other people to make better decisions in their own kind of path, but then it actually fixes the feelings that you're feeling, because you're like, okay, I got that off my chest, man. I just took my fucking rucksack off. Now it's, all right, let's move. Let's do something else.
And
Totally.
I've seen like too, like you have to keep updating your own personal kind of growth trajectory. Like when you, like you're saying, when you hit that plateau, if you don't have a vision beyond that, that's where you kind of sit in that stalemate state.
Yeah, I look at life as like a fucking book, man. You can have one awesome chapter, but if that chapter goes on for fucking 70 years, life's boring as shit and the purpose sucks. So it's like, hey, chapter 3 was rock solid, but there was the capstone. Let's go to 4 and see what the fuck's over there. It might be shitty, but hey, at least it's something new.
Yeah, I mean, keeping that moving, keeping exploring, keeping curious. I think you have to be as attached to what you don't know as what you do. And I think too often, and Jordan Peterson makes that argument, too often it's reversed. Like you cling to what you know because that's established you and that's your identity. So you don't want to even venture off into those other waters where you're an amateur and where you're a rookie and you got to learn everything all over again, you know. And that's a great place to be because that's where the edge happens. That's where it gets exciting. You're like, oh shit, here's a whole area that I'm really deficient in, you know, that I can explore. Like, great, let's go.
Do you think that that's a personality trait, like that it's innate in some people? Because I'll live that life. Like, you know, I can shoot pistol all day and say I'm good. I just picked up bow hunting. I'm fucking terrible at it. But it's nice to be uncomfortable because I'm having to learn. I'm having to do research, kind of like ramps me up. But do you think everybody has that characteristic? It's just a matter of opening it and locking it?
I think people are creatures of momentum. And I think we can't underestimate like early momentum. So something happens early and we get the positive experience of that. We learn something new, we enjoy it. And maybe it's something simple and that like sticks in our head and then we try that again and then we try it again and try it again. Whereas if someone didn't have that initial experience, maybe they pull away from it and they have the opposite experience where they don't go into something new. They choose safety over discomfort and risk. And so their momentum steers them to another island, whereas other momentum steers people to a more positive place where they're actually engaging that. And I think that has a lot more to do with it than like an innate biology or genetics or something like that. I think we're just more creatures of momentum, you know, than we realize. And I think a lot of the science on epigenetics and how our genetic switches can change depending on our belief and depending on our thoughts and depending on these neurotransmitters upregulating and downregulating based on the emotions that we're feeling. I think we're a lot more malleable than we think, but we're also very susceptible to early momentum.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I guess when you is Onnit your first business?
No,
No,
not.
So how many businesses have you had prior to this?
I don't know, tons, and they all failed.
They all failed.
Yeah.
And I mean, psychologically, what was happening during those repetitions or iterations? What was happening, you know, inside your head? Like, what were you thinking?
You know, I was thinking that Alexander the Great conquered the known world at 25, and I was 30, and I was still trying to sell fake vagina sex toys, and I was like, "What the fuck am I doing with my life?"
Wrong with that.
You're providing a very valuable service, my friend.
I understand.
Yeah.
I agree.
I feel like that's
that was not my purpose in life.
God, just think how many dudes you got off though.
Yeah, true. I ejaculated more
honestly,
men.
Yeah, you've made guys come more than anybody.
Yeah.
Janet Jameson got nothing on you.
World's biggest
How many
hoe
units sold
right
that
here.
first year?
I don't know. Well, that was, the company was Fleshlight. It wasn't my company, but I certainly helped sell a lot of those fucking things.
It's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, and I had a marketing company, so I was working with a lot of different companies, but every project that was my own, collapsed and fell in. And there was this kind of, I was wavering from this sense of like, it's just never going to happen for me. I must have gone right when I should have gone left. Something I did in my past, I should have already been there. And it was this refrain, like it should have already happened. It should have already happened. That's really, now that I can see in hindsight, was bullshit, because what really was happening is I was becoming the type of person that was going to be able to run on it. And, and I needed all those failures and I needed all those ass kickings to get me to be the right person for that. It's like everybody wants to go wield Excalibur, which is a sword of your true potential, like and have all of this power. Like, I have mighty Excalibur. Well, you know how you get fucking Excalibur? You become King Arthur first.
Right.
You know, like you find that who you are at a very deep level, and then you're able to access your potential, and then you're able to wield power justly. But you have to become that person first. You have to become that motherfucker. And that's the process that was happening. I just had a lot of doubt surrounding it. I didn't realize what was happening.
And how were you coping with that and then moving forward? Do you remember like
drinking.
Got it. Yeah.
And partying.
Yeah,
And
partying.
I mean, and hard work and self-exploration and all the things, but it was a wild, erratic time. Also, like sexual validation, trying to go out and have threesomes and foursomes, and like I was really throwing myself into this like, well, I'm not living my purpose, so let me find other ways to build myself up. I was, at one point training for an MMA fight, ended up getting in this massive street fight and got a concussion. I was like, all right, well, that was kind of my fight, so fuck it. But then, through in every other way, in the gym, in the ring, in the bedroom, in every other aspect, in social situations, I was trying to validate myself because I was feeling frustrated and blunted in my ability to actually offer my true purpose, what I'm really here as a man to do. So I did all the shadow masculine things, which is fighting and fucking and partying and, that kind of stuff.
Do you think it's just kind of empty validation, or do you think some people actually can find that validates their life? I mean, there is an expiration date on all that stuff because one day you're not going to be able to fucking fight.
I think it's all about balance. I don't mean to talk shit about fucking and fighting and partying. Like, I'm glad I did.
Oh, everybody knows that's my
yeah.
Can we go back to the
Yeah.
I want to eat some ass and punch somebody in the face. Where do I gotta go?
So I think it just has to be in balance. And I think when you're using that as a coping mechanism because you don't feel good about yourself, that's when it's a problem. When you're doing it just for the fuck of it because it's fun and you're not driven to do it, then I think it can be a healthy part of your expression and the ability to play on this playground that we call life. But I think it's more about why you're doing it rather than what you're doing that's really important. And for me, I think looking back, some of the why was because I didn't feel like I was doing enough for the world. So I felt like I had to show off in other areas. And, while it was fun and was ultimately not the most self-destructive thing I could do, it still wasn't doing what I am, now and fortunate enough to do now.
Well, it probably took you time to find that purpose, right? Because that whole time you didn't know where that purpose was going to.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I hadn't accumulated the knowledge and the introspection and the self-awareness and all of the traits that were necessary to run a company like this. I mean, we have 180 employees now. I mean, that's a lot of weight that you have to get used to carrying on your shoulders. And at every stage, it's just training. It's just loading more weight in the rucksack. Like, all right, how much can I carry now? How much? Okay, 10 employees. Okay, I got that. I can climb the hill with 10. All right, 20. All right, 50. All right, 100, 180. All right. I'm good.
Well, hopefully when you start getting 180, you have friends that can carry some of those rucksacks.
Because
you're like, hey, dude, this is really fucking heavy.
Every sack is full, but every person you get is another little person in your sack.
Indeed.
And it's just, it's exponential what you're able to hold. And it just comes from your own reliance on your own, truth and the fact that that you're doing your best.
Do you think that Aubrey Marcus sitting right here at this table has 100% found his purpose in life, or do you think that there's still going to be some navigation to find further purpose if it's in the same path, or you think potentially maybe in 10 years you wake up and go, holy fuck, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing?
I think I have a pretty good blueprint for my purpose. Am I living it yet? No. I'm still now at this point, like I'm doing a pretty good job with the own the day, own your life practices. Like this morning I fucking had a flawless morning routine all the way to the point where we got here. And I'm carrying that forward to a strong degree. Now, with the mindset practices, I'm doing pretty good. But I have a good idea of, and I think actually writing that book will help codify and put like actionable steps that I can apply to my life in an even more regimented way. So that'll level me up there. And in love and relationship, I've been in this massive open relationship experiment, which has been tearing me up and putting me back together a billion times. And that's getting better. And then in the community, we're starting to form these kind of rituals and ceremonies that can form that kind of brother and sisterhood that I think all human beings crave. So I'm in the process of living it. So I don't know it all and I don't know, but I have in my mind a very clear blueprint of the direction that I'm going for at least the next 10 to 15 years. And I would be surprised if there was like a real sharp left turn or right turn from that.
You said about the book coding for actionable items. As someone, I love to create, love to write. Do you think that actually helps us understand ourselves better by kind of putting our feelings on paper, where you can organize them and go, oh fuck, these are my kind of discrepancies?
Totally.
And okay.
Totally. I mean, I am a better person, and I have better practices after writing the book than before, because not only does it force you to double down on all the research and be really certain of it, but it puts it in like a direct plan. So this is ultimately, like, even if not a single other person read this, it would have been a benefit to my life to create it, just so that I had the concrete plan of how I knew I could attack a day and enjoy a day, as best as I possibly could. So, and I think, probably all my books and even every product in the company is something to that effect. I mean, everything I create is like, oh yeah, this is something that's really dope for me. And fortunately, so many other people in the world are like me in some way, shape, or form. We're all like each other, so it's good for them too.
I think that's the true, like, entrepreneur spirit, is how do I make epic things that don't exist for my life to benefit kind of my existence, and then subsequently they'll help people that are like-minded in the same space. Like, oh man, I've always wanted that alpha brain stuff. Okay, thanks for making it, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, totally.
How do you attack the day, man? Like what's your morning look like before you walked into the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about in the book. And so first 3 things in the morning: hydration. So you lose over a pound of water overnight. So 3 grams of sea salt, splash of lemon, about 16 ounces of water. First thing I do when I wake up. Sometimes I'll add some extra minerals or some other mineral electrolyte mix in there. Depends on what's going on. But that's like the baseline immediately. And then from there, I go out and get some sunlight, because that starts to set the circadian rhythm. So, that's the circadian rhythm regulates hormones, wakefulness, sleepiness, all of these things that operate kind of behind the scenes in the human body. And getting that light exposure, not only to your eyes, but all through the photoreceptors in your ears and skin, is huge. So a nice sunny day like this, just took my clothes off and was looking up, eyes closed in the sky, and letting the sun kind of hit me for a little while. Swam some laps in the pool, because movement is the second part that sets circadian rhythm. So between the hydration, the light, and the movement, I've had plenty of energy all day, all morning, all through this podcast, and haven't needed a coffee, haven't needed anything. And days where I skip it, first thing I do when I come into the office is a big ass cup of coffee, because I'm not quite awake yet. My body hasn't signaled to me that I'm awake. So now I'll get to save the coffee for second podcast of the day, and when things are on kind of a lull, but I feel just markedly different from those very 3 simple things.
I'm over here laughing, because literally my morning ritual is I have a gallon of water, and I usually a gallon and a half a day, and I chug that thing right when I wake up, and then I walk outside and just take the sun. I had no clue about the science behind it. It's just kind of my ritual. Like, sunlight makes me feel good, and water makes me feel good. Do those more repetitions. Go.
Yeah, do that. And then a little bit of movement. Doesn't have to be a workout. A little bit of movement, that's going to really help. And then exposure to cold. So I take a shower in the morning most often, and that I'll start it hot, but then I always crank that as cold as it will go. Unfortunately, in the summer in Texas, it's not like a very heroic act. Right?
Yeah,
the water doesn't
water's
get
74 degrees.
Yeah, water
like,
doesn't get that
man.
cold, so don't go around
Texas
fucking patting
heat.
me on the back.
Yeah.
But that's gonna obviously drop cortisol, which is gonna drop inflammation. It's gonna build some longevity markers like cold shock proteins, some different things. Super helpful for you to go to cold exposure. Plus, it teaches you to do the shit you don't want to do.
Right.
Like, that's so underrated. If we did half the shit that we knew that we were supposed to do, we'd be fucking superheroes. But we don't. We just like, oh, I should do that, but I'm not gonna. I shouldn't do that, but I'm gonna. So going into the cold water is a great way to be like, all right, I'm gonna do this because it's fucking good for me, and I'm not gonna leave myself an option. And then you get used to that. You practice it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I started doing that years ago, just because I noticed that I had to have what I felt were confidence targets. I had to be able to knock these things down psychologically in order to internalize and then be able to build confidence in myself on a regular basis, which was anything and everything. It was like, oh, that water looks really fucking cold. I'm going to jump in that river. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a million things that are super uncomfortable throughout the week or the day, because it helped me set my azimuth through the rest of the week or the rest of the month and go, I'm going to tackle that thing first, because that's the one thing I don't want to fucking do, but that's the one thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that other people are doing it. And, I mean, a lot of people are doing it, obviously, because there's a lot of successful people.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, confidence target is a great way to describe it. Like, I talk about all of these things all the time. Like, anytime you can do something where the benefit is positive or at least neutral, but there's a big kind of cake slice of fear that you can eat away, you know, and move to actually like something positive, like you got to attack that. And whether that's, you know, for me, I tell this story all the time. Like, I really don't like touching crickets or cockroaches with my hand. You know, like I'd much prefer to put like a thing over them, paper, and then send them out that way. Or sometimes smash them, but then you got to clean up the guts. It's like no good options.
Right.
But the easiest option is just to grab that motherfucker and let him outside. You know, there's no reason I shouldn't. You know, I can wash my hands afterwards. It's not like a problem there. But there's like a fear.
You've developed a construct that's like not letting
Right.
you do
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So then by collapsing that, by going like, all right, I am stronger than that fear. I'm going to grab this cockroach with my hand and I'm going to let him outside. Like, when I successfully do that and I don't like squeal like a little girl when I'm trying to approach it, and I'm able to actually go through, it's like, oh wow, I feel like fucking Tim Kennedy right now.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel amazing. And I actually accomplished nothing more other than collapsing my own fear. And that's a worthwhile thing, because then when I'm
It makes larger fears more attainable.
exactly,
I imagine. Yeah.
exactly.
The next level will be grabbing it and eating
Eating
it
it.
right off the floor. That'll be some next
But
level
then what's level
confidence.
3?
See, I think
Check
that,
this out.
this
That's
out.
just gross. I don't know. That's just fucking gross.
That might be the next honest supplement,
No,
like protein.
I don't endorse
crickets
level 2. I
to
endorse
blend
only
in
level
your.
1. I only endorse
Stay here at level 1.
I just
and
want to know
cockroaches
where
are
do we
nasty
go to
fuckers.
level
My
3?
dog
What's
won't even
level
eat 'em.
3 at that point?
finding a way to fuck it. I don't know. I don't know.
And then eating it.
I don't know.
If you can fuck a cockroach,
You've won.
Listen, I
Or
got
lost.
I'm gonna
real
give you a
small
hug.
dick.
I'm gonna give you a hug.
I got a real small dick, so don't tempt
I'm gonna give
me.
you
We got to get into some tools. I mean, some actual tools and techniques. You know, you've been in business. How long's Onnit been around?
July 2011, we launched Alpha Brain, and that was really the start of the big party.
When did you make your first sale after you started the company?
Well, I mean, with Alpha Brain, we were sold out in like 12 hours. But we started the company. I started the company in 2010, and partly because I was partying so much, our first products were hangover-based supplements, and that didn't do very well. That was failing. Alpha Brain was that first target that was really successful. That first product, and immediately upon launching it, you know, we were sold out in 12 hours, and then kept selling out and selling out. So once Alpha Brain formed and was available, things really took off.
Was it under Onnit or was it Alpha Brain first?
It was under Onnit.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
Onnit was
got it.
around for, like I said, like a year before.
Right. Okay, got it. And then, so when you were starting that, how did you even find the correct scientists and things like that you're working with in order to develop it?
So I had a couple advantages to that. One, my stepmother was the nutraceutical doctor for all of Pat Riley's team. So that's the LA Lakers in the 80s, Knicks in the 90s, Heat in the 2000s. And so it was really well versed on putting together natural supplements for athletes. And she has a background in Chinese medicine and was really familiar with a lot of the herbs. And one of the herbs is actually a Chinese herb that's probably the core of the Alpha Brain formula. So it's something that I was familiar with already, and that I'd been given on a paper napkin during test days and during SAT tests. You know, I've been taking some of the ingredients in Alpha Brain my whole life.
Right.
And I was used to taking something that would modulate the effects of my, focus and memory and attention, and then taking other plants that would help me with endurance or my basketball games or whatever other, goal that I had in mind for that day. So I got used to that paradigm, and I had her as a resource. I also, because my parents thought that I was going to party myself into a brain dead coma, they sent me to this doctor in New York who did a 4-day cognitive battery of tests, and really did a really deep dive on my own neurotransmitter strengths and deficiencies, and then talked really deeply about solutions to those. And so I understood how the neurotransmitter interplay worked with, the human brain, at least on my own self. So I had that as a resource, and then I had had some more kind of medical doctors that were kind of thinking outside the box, that were a resource. And then from there, it was just the body of research on PubMed So it was kind of a combination of my own personal experience, my stepmother's experience from my 4-day deep dive with the doctor in New York, some other medical advice, and a lot of research. And it got a company to take a chance on creating a sample because we didn't have any money, then at that point. So they created a sample, and that first sample was strong as shit, and it was really good. And it was definitely too strong, but I wanted to make sure that we created something that had natural products that you could actually feel. And I think that was the differentiator for Alpha Brain in the market, is that people were used to drugs that you could feel and supplements that you imagined did something.
Right.
And I wanted to find a natural supplement that you had no fucking question was doing something.
Right.
And, when we had that first batch of Alpha Brain come back, I knew we had that.
What's too strong when you say?
Because now
What's too strong?
I want to
man?
try it.
Are you
now.
seeing
I'm like, do you
sounds?
have any?
You're getting ready to I'm
Seeing
getting ready to pull
wavelengths.
some of these off the shelf and go to work.
So acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter that we're upregulating with Alpha Brain, it's very similar in mechanism of action to nicotine.
Okay.
So the nicotinic receptors. So anybody who's, had a nice nicotine buzz and be like, man, this feels fucking good, and then left that pouch in too long and then go, oh no.
Right.
Oh,
You've
no.
never done that, Evan, have you? Never, not once, huh?
And that was the feeling. It could take you to the point where, oh my God, I'm feeling so good. I'm so focused. Holy shit, I'm nauseous. And it'll have a similar response if you push the acetylcholine mechanism too hard. But for some people, obviously, they can put in that, super strong, double, triple strength, put in 2 pouches of nicotine in their mouth and they're fucking fine. Those people would probably love the old Alpha Brain, because they're used to that kind of modulation.
Like a Jeremy Horn type guy. Like,
Yeah.
Jeremy Horn's a good friend of ours, and that dude can just take in all kinds of trash. It doesn't matter. He's like a trash receptacle, hot dogs and Kool-Aid and everything else, and he just functions like a machine.
Yeah,
He
I
would be
wish I
that
was
guy.
that motherfucker.
So do I.
I have to take in perfection, and I oftentimes produce dog shit. So I'm like the opposite. I'm like the counterbalance to Jeremy Horn.
So with Alpha Brain, you get win. I guess you could classify it as a solidified win under your belt, and then you'd had some failures in the past. So at that point, did you know?
No,
okay.
I was terrified every single day that I was going to lose. And I spent the first, and that's actually, if I look back at something I regret, it's just being fucking terrified for the first few years, because it was actually working. Like, oh my God, this is working. What's going to happen? How is this going to get fucked up? Where's the fucking monster coming from that's going to ruin this one?
How do you combat that fear, though? Because, I mean,
No, really, all of us want to know.
No, 'cause-
for real, we all want to know
I've
right
been
now.
in business for 5.5 years, and it's never been as successful as it is sitting at this table. But I always have that in the back of my mind. If you're like, what if the
somehow.
fucking bridge collapses?
It's the other
What
shoe.
if-
It's the other shoe, man. You're waiting for it to drop in the story. Like, this is a great story, but I can't wait for the fucking axe to go through that dude's head.
Yeah.
Well, I guess really the way you got to look at it is, has anything in your life happened that with hindsight, in some way, shape, or form, you haven't been grateful for? And for the most part, that's a no. Like, usually all the hard shit, all the challenging stuff, I mean, you guys in the military, obviously death is a kind of a final thing, and I'm sure you've had other people die, but as far as like hardships for you that would be relatable to business or relatable to relationship, anything that happens, you can always almost look back and be like, you know what, in hindsight, I'm fucking grateful for that. It taught me this, I learned this, I became stronger because of it. So in hindsight, we have near 100% gratitude, but in foresight, looking forward, we have near 100% fear. You know what I mean? And so it's really switching that and having, your foresight like your hindsight, so that knowing that no matter what happens, you're going to be grateful for that at some point anyways. You're going to make it through. It's just like deep faith in oneself, that and faith in that kind of stoic philosophy, that whatever obstacle is thrown, that you'll overcome it in some way, shape, or form. Even if it means it kicks your ass for a while, that ass kicking will eventually kick you out smarter for your next business or your next project or your next thing. So, it comes down to like a deep faith, and a deep faith that you're going to figure it out and you're going to be better for it no matter what.
I love that perspective. I guess it is kind of about self-confidence and knowing that no matter if the fucking house burns down today, I'll find a way to pitch a fucking tent for the night. There's like, I'm being a solution-based person. You can figure it out eventually. And then that in hindsight, like you're saying, the experience will make you better in the future. But
Yeah.
it's super hard to just fucking slice out the fear, you know, 'cause you're like, oh, shit.
It's one of the hardest things, but that fear is like a wet wool blanket on our joy at a certain level too. It like keeps us from really enjoying all of
celebrating
yeah,
everything.
exactly.
Like, it's
all
like
of
we
the
don't-
pleasure of what we're doing, you know, is when we're always looking too much for fear. And it doesn't mean be blind to it. It doesn't mean like you stop being vigilant. I think you can be vigilant without being fearful, you know, and I think that's kind of the role of any CEO or any entrepreneur. Be vigilant but confident. And that's I think the place that I'm working more and more to get to.
What are you afraid of right now?
That's it's an interesting question. I think there's a lot fewer fears and they're a lot more subtle now, and they're more scattered about, because like it's almost like back in the old days of war, the enemy would amass in a certain spot, and then you would know, like, okay, let's go, like there you are, like let's fight. And like in all the places where fear has amassed and I'm able to really recognize it, I've fucking charged. It's like full charge of the light brigade. We're going straight.
Come
at
me, cricket.
Yeah,
you're getting thrown outside, bitch.
Exactly. We're going straight at the guns. You know, so now my fears have all kind of scattered and are smaller and are hidden. And it's more of that.
It's an unconventional war.
It's more of that unconventional war on fear.
Insurgency of fear.
Exactly. And they're hiding in houses, and some are in plain clothes. And it's, it's like I'm just constantly having to look and find where these more subtle places that I'm afraid of, because it's not death. It's not living up to it's not all the big things, that I've had to attack and have taken a long time to disperse. Now it's just little shit, little areas.
What's something that you haven't done yet that you're trying to do, either in the near future, like this year? Because I mean,
that's a good question.
This is such a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Like to finish a book and all the work that goes into it.
I'd like to give a TED talk.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a TED talk. I think I'm super comfortable on stage, and I've given quite a few talks, but nothing of that kind of magnitude. So I think
you need that
like
video
big
with
keynotes.
The big
yeah,
logo
man.
and everything.
Like big keynote, either on TED stage or some other stage. That would be cool to do, for sure.
I've got a few questions on nootropics. So obviously you've explored those probably more than your average person, and you sell one or more. You sell more than one. How many?
Well, it depends on where you draw it, but mostly Alpha Brain. Yeah.
Right. Outside of that, what other experiences have you had with nootropics, and can you talk about them?
Yeah, I mean, I've had everything from the pharmaceutical versions, which feel like I'm taking speed, and I can't sleep for 2 days, and it's really, I'm pretty sensitive to that. Any kind of stimulant of that class. I mean, like Adderall is one molecule different than methamphetamine,
right?
And the Provigils and Nuvigils are the same. They're very stimulating.
Yeah,
what's
the difference between those two? Like, because
I think it's just a slight modification on the same mechanism, but between Nuvigil and between Adderall.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so Adderall is more of that. It's more of like an amphetamine kind of mechanism,
right? And
then the Nuvigil is more of that classic nootropic, but is also highly stimulating. So it's actually modulating some neurotransmitter effects. It feels like, and I'd have to dive deeper into the science to give like the proper answer on that. But it's too much for me, by far. The racetam family, which is somewhere between a plant and a drug, it's a synthetic, but it's a little bit easier to play with. I've had some success with that, but ultimately, the best things for me are, I really do believe we created the best in class natural nootropic in Alpha Brain. And then nicotine is the other best nootropic that I'm aware of. And I wrote it in my book, and I've gotten a fair bit of shit for it, for including nicotine in a book on health. But I think if you mind, first of all, how you get nicotine in the body, because there's undoubtedly cigarettes will fucking kill you. Right. So don't do it. There's way smarter ways to get nicotine in your body. Like
gum. Yeah,
gum, or even just vaping, or, and then snus is also a really clean way. The Royal London College of Physicians says that smokeless tobacco, especially like really clean smokeless tobacco, is 10 to 10,000 times safer than smoking cigarettes. Wow. So like significantly safer way to get nicotine into your system. And then like a patch is probably the cleanest way because it's just transdermal and all it is pure nicotine, but it's super boring. So
Right.
I tend not to do that. I use the snooze packs, but I would say Alpha Brain and nicotine and, caffeine are that's if people are familiar with those and know how to use those tools intelligently, I really don't think you need anything else.
Do you stack them or do you spread them out? How
You
do
can.
Do you
Yeah.
swap? Yeah.
You can. I mean, Alpha Brain and, like I said, modulating acetylcholine is similar to modulating nicotine, so you can stack them, but it's really going to be stacking on the same
Got it.
pile.
Right.
But stacking with caffeine to give you that kind of hormonal energy, that kind of energy surge, because there's no stimulants in Alpha Brain. And so stacking caffeine with Alpha Brain is something that I'll do quite often. And then obviously nicotine and caffeine, that works as well too. But those are the three that I think really stand out to me as the tools that you need to have available.
And you guys sell. I mean, I'm a customer first of all, so I've tried a lot of about everything that you sell. But so do you consume pretty much everything that you do? Of course. I just wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah,
You
I mean, I have these fat ass vitamin packs that
Right.
I just took right before it, and they're just loaded to the gills. I can take them down in one swoop. I can take probably like 25 pills at a time, like a really insane amount of pills. And I take that 3 times a day, and it's packed with all of our stuff. We also have our own multivitamin packs. I just pack mine myself because I put more shit in that, and I just like overflow them. And then, it's not that I take every single product every day. That would be like crazy, but all the proteins are available, and I'm mixing and matching for the shakes. I have all the bars and the jerkies and then the supplements are mixed up in the packs. And, and Alpha Brain's something that I don't put in the packs. That's something like, as you guys probably saw, I took that before the podcast, Alpha Brain Instant and some green juice. So I'll take that when I need it as per needed. And there's a couple products that are like that. But for the most part, if I wouldn't utilize it, unless it's specifically a female product, which we don't have any that are specifically for females at this point, if I wouldn't take it, I wouldn't make it. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not that different from everybody else that I'd create something that I wouldn't take myself.
Well, and the reason I was asking was, are you the guy that's driving the train on new supplements, new vitamins, basically product development, or do you have a team of guys doing that now?
It's a team now.
Okay.
It's a team now. So we have a couple medical doctors, Dr. Conover, Dr. Engel, who we're constantly rapping with. We have another research doctor, Dr. Kreipke, who's here on staff full-time. We have a full-time nutritionist who's here, Kyle Kingsbury, who's super knowledgeable, former UFC fighter, and just the ultimate guinea pig for all things that have existed for human optimization. He's in the meeting, and it's a huge collaboration at this point, trying to find solutions to holes that are out there in the market. And the way we operate, if there's somebody doing something that's really exemplary, we're not going to try and create something the same. We really want to try to advance the field. Right. And that's our goal.
Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just on the Alpha Brain because I saw you take it. Does your body metabolize that similar to just like a caffeine supplement or something like that, where the second you hit it, it's working?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if you take the capsules.
And you can tell me to
powder.
shut the fuck up and read
No,
the box
I'm
if you
super
want.
hooked
But
on it now. Like, I'm just eyeballing everything over there. Like, I need it all.
It depends on the capsules. Take about 15-20 minutes to dissolve, and then the powder goes into the gut, and then depending on what's in your gut and how fast that's moving, but typically with the instant powder, especially if I'm on an empty stomach, I'll feel it in about 15 minutes. And we have research from the Boston Center for Memory in the clinical trial that we did that shows Alpha Brain takes effect the first day that you use it.
No shit.
Yeah.
I take it in the morning, same way, caffeine and Alpha Brain. So we're not turning this into an Alpha Brain commercial, but I did want to get some of these things out.
Tell Evan he doesn't need any more because he's a fucking morning person in this
I
morning.
am a fucking
he's
morning
like,
person.
Wakey, eggs and bakey. We're making drip coffee, guys.
Let's go to the river.
Like, oh, fuck me.
Hey, that was actually thrown out.
I think there's such a knowledge here. There's so much knowledge here because I've heard you talk about probiotics. I've heard you talk about mineral supplements, and and you obviously sell those things. So the question is, are you discovering these and pulling them back in looking at the collaborative nature of your team? Is your team giving those to you kind of as a guinea pig? Is it just kind of working more?
It kind of comes both ways. So let's take a let's take a product that we're working on, right? Which is a nitric oxide formula. So for example, so we know that the nitric oxide mechanism of action is super beneficial. It's great to get a pump. It's great for your mood. It's great for your fucking getting full pump in bed as well as it is in the gym. Like nitric oxide is
boners,
fucking,
JT.
yeah.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. He's talking hard bonus.
Love them.
Nitric oxide is beneficial across the board. So so that's something that we come to the table with and we're like, all right, we need to create a best in class for this. And then we have a bunch of different people start going in different directions. I'm not typically the guy that, and now at this point, is beating the bushes for every little ingredient unless I find something through like my own travel. So I know that fermented beet powder is kind of like the base. It's like the bare minimum. And that's what I've been taking. Like, all right, so we know we're going to have fermented beet in there. How do we make this better than fermented beet, which has natural nitrates and the other things, pumpkin seeds, arugula, Swiss chard, dark chocolate, red wine, all these things contain like the natural components to help boost nitric oxide. So I have my pumpkin seeds at home. I have my dark chocolate. I got my beet powder. That's how I'm doing it. And then I come to the team and say, all right, team, how do we make this better? And then they go to all the ingredient suppliers and they go to the research and they start looking at what amino acids might be beneficial and how you can bond those amino acids to different nitrates. And we end up coming up with a compounded formula that we'll sample. And then we try the sample, and sometimes the sample's good, sometimes it's terrible. Sometimes, and it just depends. In this case, we got a sample back and the sample's fucking good. And we're like, all right, now we have a product. Now it goes to labels, and then it goes to branding, and then it goes to, the marketing machine kind of gets behind it. So that's typically how it works. We'll identify something that we're enjoying, something else we're getting, but how do we do this better?
Do you guys do case studies and stuff? Because I know like the supplement industry is kind of, let's say, not very regulated because, right, the FDA doesn't like regulate it.
It's a weird, people say that. So that's kind of like a trope. Like everybody says supplement industry is not very regulated.
Yeah. And that was more of a question than a statement.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it is actually highly regulated, but not regulated for efficacy. It's regulated for safety. Very tightly, like FDA GMP practices, and making sure that what's on your label is in your label, that the places that are creating the products are safe, that the products included in the product are safe. But what the FDA doesn't do is try to validate any of your claims, and that's where supplement companies get in trouble. They promise you that you're going to lose a bunch of weight. Well, it's not the FDA's purview to say, well, this product doesn't do that or not. Yeah. That only does that for drugs. That's what a drug does. A drug can make a claim about curing something or actually fixing something.
It's like the warning labels like, caution, you may have excessive growth and fucking grow your dick.
But end up, exactly. But how that's regulated though is the FTC and plaintiffs' attorneys, anytime anybody gets out of line with claiming too much, they get massive lawsuits. So it's actually it's a much tighter industry than you think. Now, that being said, if you go to the gas station and you buy one of those pills that has a fucking
Rhino 6'9".
Yes. You know that one.
God. Of course
They
you
always have a rhino on them. And it's fucking
it's like
rhino,
goat weed, right? The goat weed.
And like multiple X's. That supplement probably didn't go through FDA GMP. So you definitely do want to choose a reputable company. But then to go back to your case studies are kind of like, there's so much bias. The placebo effect is so strong that it's really not that helpful. Like if I could give anybody a pill and say, hey, you're going to lose a bunch of weight with this. And they're like, okay. And they will, because their mind will tell them that they will. And that's why you have to account for the placebo effect to really have anything that's of merit. And that's why we've gone to full double-blind randomized clinical trials to help validate our supplements.
And dude, you earned a lot of respect in my book because I was just, going through Onnit and checking it out because I've used products here and there, but I haven't been like a lifelong customer. But when you're talking about your pre-workout, and you're saying that you upped the taste profile, it was cool because you broke down the placebo effects and then actually showed that it helps performance, long-term performance. And then moreover, the fact that you were just like, yeah, you could barely swallow this the last run, but this time it's actually fucking good and like super honest and transparent with a product that you sell was fucking cool. Because a lot of people would be like, it's just upgraded, it's better now, but they would never admit and kind of own that. Yeah, it was kind of a little funky taste. I thought that was super fucking cool and kind of builds faith in the company as
man. I mean, I try to just level with people. The products are good. I don't need to make up shit. I don't need to pretend.
No, it's fucking great,
I don't need to fake the funk. Like, and that's, I think that's important. It's important no matter what you're doing. Just fucking be real with people. People's bullshit detectors are way better than we give them credit. We think that we're fooling people. Like we think we're fooling our girl or fooling our, fooling our boss. We ain't fooling shit. We ain't fooling shit. Like people can sniff that out way more.
No, my wife's brown. I can't fool her with anything. There's a kitchen knife. Like, what'd you say, homie? Like, oh, shit, dude. No, fuck. Do you think we could get Jared to lose some weight here at the Onnit facility? Because we're very concerned with his well-being. He lives off McDonald's and Monsters.
I have a McDonald's addiction.
What's happening here is
that's a dirty addiction. That's
is.
like worse than some deep dives.
No,
it's horrible.
But I need this, Now I'm gonna.
Aubrey is looking at Jared like he would look at a moldy towel on the floor of a bathroom. It's the greatest look I've ever seen somebody give to Jared.
Yeah.
Like, you are disgusting.
I mean, McDonald's, really.
No.
But it hasn't dampened your smile, my friend.
No, I'm still happy.
That's fucking good.
When I get a quick 4 cheeseburgers in, I'm good.
Yeah, for about 15 before he goes to sleep.
The good thing is, like, it's not even about changing what you eat. It's just changing the components of what you eat. You know what I mean? Like, you like fucking cheeseburgers? Cool. Get some fucking grass-fed beef, some raw cheddar cheese, some avocado mayo, some sprouted or sourdough, buns, and some good, like, farm-raised greens or whatever the fuck else you want to put on it, and some, antibiotic, nitrite-free bacon, and you can have your fucking bacon cheeseburger. Like, go hard. But it's just going to take a little. It's just going to take a little bit more time and a little bit more attention, and it's going to make a dramatically different. It's going to have a dramatically different effect on your body. So it's because it's not. People always say you are what you eat, but you're not only you are what you eat. You are what you ate. So if you're eating cows that have all they've eaten is just fucking corn syrup and corn mush and you're going to take all of that in. That's what that cow is made of. Mm-hmm. But if that cow is made of wild grass and herbs and fucking weeds and plants and all kinds of shit that they find in the field, then they're going to take that in, and that cow is going to be made of that, and that's going to transfer. And you can see that in markers like CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, is one of the most beneficial things. Actually shows some benefit for weight loss. So grass-fed beef has more CLA than conventional beef, and you'll start seeing it in like really common markers, but what you don't see is in these markers that are harder to test for. So just upgrading your food quality, and you can still eat the same shit for the most part. I mean, you do have to probably pay attention to macros and cut out a lot of the carbohydrates. Yeah, that's good.
That was the lettuce on the fucking cheeseburger, though.
But there is a farmer's market at the bottom of the elevator in my house.
No doubt, man. So that's all that's about. And then other things are just nevers. Like, never is soda, or like stuff with corn syrup in it. Like, just no. There's better options. Like, have a Zevia soda. Have something else. Like,
I'm not a soda guy.
Yeah. So all right. So you're way ahead of the game. You're way ahead of the game already. So if you cut out like, all of that kind of refined sugar, a lot of that refined starch, and then you upgrade your food quality, man, you're fucking golden. It's easy, and it's not. You're not trying to be fucking Mr. Shredder. Like, you just need to make mild changes, and you just feel better. You'll just have more energy. You'll feel more connected to your food. You'll feel internally, both mentally and physically, happier and have a greater sense of well-being, and still eating the exact same number of fucking cheeseburgers. That's the goal.
I'm going to do it.
Do it.
Checking back in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about psychedelics a little bit, and I guess if we classify them as that, like any, you've done some experimentation with those. I've heard some of the talks.
I guess you could call it that.
Yeah, or you've used them to what degree, and then how have you seen that they've helped you? And that's a huge question, I know, but unpack it for me in a.
Well, I was pretty staunchly atheist growing up. You know, my family was kind of agnostic and didn't really push me any which way. But but I went to church here I went to school here in Texas, and I would always get kind of roped into these kind of church retreats and church things, and just seeing the effects, a combination of seeing the effects, physically, of like how guilty people felt and how fearful people felt, and also that kind of organized religion not making sense. And then also I went to Italy, I saw the dungeons of the Inquisition, and I saw like horrible things done in the name of religion. And I was like, you know what, fuck this doesn't make sense to me. And so I had no spiritual practice at all. And then I went after high school, and I did a traditional vision quest with a shaman, and I was pretty scared. I didn't know what it was, but again, I still had that instinct, like, okay, vision quest. Like, I was huge into Native American culture, and I was like, I get it, vision quest. You go out alone, you take a psychedelic brew, and you encounter yourself in a deeper way. I was on board with that principle. And when I did that, I took a psilocybin-based tea, and I felt my entire body evaporate into nothing, and then something else remained that I could call my consciousness, or I'm comfortable even using the word soul at this point. I was like, oh shit, like I got some things wrong. Like there is more to life than just the physical. And when we die, it isn't just being in a black box of nothing. Like there's something that transcends that. And I had a deep knowing of that from that very first experience. And I stayed up and I wrote in my journals feverishly all night, and I understood the world and myself in a dramatically different way from that single experience. And it was more than, I could have had 1 million people try and tell me everything that I learned that night. I would have given them all the middle finger. Fuck you, whatever. Bunch of bullshit, hocus pocus, nonsense, spirit, consciousness, soul. Get the fuck out of here. But then I felt it, and then that was indisputable for me. And so that really developed the whole spiritual side of my life, and an understanding of what I was beyond my mind and beyond my body. And I've continued to explore that, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca or iboga or, MDMA, which really teaches you about the heart and has some incredible research on healing post-traumatic stress. It's going on from maps.org. I don't know if you guys have talked to anybody about that, but so many in psilocybin now showing phase 2 trials for healing depression and anxiety. It really just shows you a way around a lot of these problems and these things that are very difficult to solve, and gives you a glimpse of the greatest parts of yourself. You in the most love, you in the most creative thinking, you in the most profound understanding of the universe. And so those glimpses and those tastes have really helped steer me to right where I am now. And I don't know if I'd be here with Onnit and in this position if it wasn't for the help of all the plants along the way.
And is there one experience past the one that you had just out of high school that you can put a pin in and say that one was advanced this section of my life more based on some self-actualization or?
Mm-hmm. So it was the second or third ayahuasca experience I had, second, I think. And in that experience, I really had a kind of like a breakthrough experience. The first one, it was just all about encountering my fear, and it was like fear in every possible way. It was like I was envisioning insects exploding out of my body, like eels eating my insides. I was sliding down a vine of thorns naked, and it was ripping my balls to shreds. And I was like, why is that happening? And then it told me I had cancer, and it was this whole fucking crazy encounter with death. That was my first ayahuasca experience. And ayahuasca is a traditional brew that's been made in the South American jungles for thousands of years. And it contains a DMT containing leaf with MAOI inhibitor, so it's orally active, and it's a very strong, ritualistic experience for those of you who haven't heard of it. But anyways, I did the second one, and in the second one I had a very positive experience where I had some encounters where this giant flotilla of life and flora and fauna and snakes like sucked this black smoke out of my body, and then this metallic spaceship beamed this light underneath my tongue, and it was like this crazy experience. And I felt like the top of my head peeled off, and when the top of my head peeled off, I felt like I could see into the past and future and present in a really profound way. And I was able to see, and this was before Onnit launched Alpha Brain, and I was able to see Onnit successful, and I was able to see what I needed to do to make it successful. I was able to envision it as like a heart, and then there was like arteries and veins that were flowing in and out of it, and some of them were clogged up, and some of those were bad ideas or bad products or bad marketing or ways that I was acting and ways that I was presenting myself untruthfully, that was actually blocking this from being a success. And I was able to, like, in the vision space, rework all of those different problems. And so that vision of Onnit being the success that it is now, like, I was given a crystal clear vision of that, blasted on ayahuasca down deep in the jungles of Peru, listening to some old songs taught to my shaman by the plants themselves. And that was the experience that really, gave me a real clear idea of a lot of the ethos surrounding Onnit.
I haven't encountered many people that has the experience with, like, psilocybin as much as I have. So, like, being able to ask you this the best way, because I've been trying to get him, and he won't. And the best way I can explain my turning point was it gave you a third person view of yourself for the first time. For somebody, and you yourself, you're not lying. You know all the secrets. So it was almost like coming out of that, I saw where I wanted to go, but I saw what I wasn't doing to get there. And it was like, that's what started the path.
Yep.
Like, woke up from that and said, let's get to work.
Yeah, it's the vantage point of your highest self, your highest consciousness, your greatest intelligence. And that's what it feels like. People worry about, like, losing control. Like your baser instincts are going to come out, when most likely it's going to be your best self that comes out. And occasionally you will have some disorienting experience, but that's very, very rare, especially on a true classic psychedelic and not a dissociative like salvia or some of these other things.
Place too. Like,
and you're in the right setting,
and then
yeah, with the right medicine.
With your white.
Yeah, intention is crucial.
I'm gonna do ayahuasca.
Yeah,
Wake up in a pool of blood,
you have to be in a good mind going in, otherwise that's
a
going
good
to
mind
control.
with a good provider, with a good setting, with a good material, because it can go squirrely, no doubt, and it is a trial by fire. But what you will find is more you than you ever thought, more control than you ever thought you had, because it's actually you, and you're beyond your own fears and limitations that are actually driving you, unbeknownst to you. You raise to a level of consciousness where you can look at the things that are actually driving you, and then decide whether you want to keep those or not. So you're actually gaining control rather than losing control in any positive psychedelic experience. So it's kind of opposite of what a lot of people think, and what a lot of the fear that keeps people out, like, I don't really want to lose control. I don't know what's going to come up. What's going to come out typically is your very best fucking self.
Is this why you set this podcast up, Jared?
I'm
convinced.
there. Psychedelic
there.
intervention.
Let's go, Aubrey. Let's jump on the plane.
But again, you can contest, it changed you for the rest of your life.
No doubt.
Yes.
And it still does.
And
it still does. And every time I come in thinking, like, I got this shit figured out, I'll do a traditional plant medicine ceremony and be like, oh, I'm so fucking stupid. But, in a positive way, because then it gives me the opportunity to level up again, look at something else.
I love it.
What makes you laugh? What's making you laugh right now? What's making you happy?
Man,
He's
that's
laughing
like
at the
a
fat guy in front of
it's
you.
other than
really-
Jared's diet.
Honestly, it's a state of being. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm in the right state of being, everything makes me laugh. Everything makes me happy. If I'm in the wrong state of being, nothing makes me laugh and nothing makes me happy. It doesn't fucking matter. And so for me, it's about getting myself in that right state, and that starts. You got to build it up from the ground level. Is my body in the right state? Because if my body's in pain or if my body's sick, it puts a lot of pressure on my mind to get right. So all right, once the body's taken care of, all right, then is my mind in the right place? Am I thinking about things the right way? Am I still, do I feel infected with fear, or do I feel infected with, do I have enough faith and confidence? And then is my heart open? Do I feel like I can give and receive love, that I'm worthy of love, that I've forgiven myself for the past enough that I can receive love, and that I can give love and feel that I'm valid enough to give it to somebody? All right, is that in line? Is my community, is my community there for me? Am I there for them? Am I in support? Am I following my mission and my purpose? And when all that lines up, man, I find myself crying tears of joy. Like, at all common things. I'll look at a lover and cry tears of joy. I'll have a great meal and I'll be tearing up and smiling, and I'll just be laughing hysterically. Like, at that place, I'm so happy. But at the very same time, I can take a couple wrong turns. Maybe my body's off, maybe my mind's off, maybe something happens in the relationship, And the funniest motherfucker on the planet couldn't get me to crack a genuine smile. You know, so like heaven and hell are both there internally. And it's just a matter of whether I can steer towards one and steer away from the other.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, this has been incredible. I know that an hour literally flew by. I'm looking at Dave, looking at his watch, basically. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
And yeah, where can people check you out?
Yeah.
Your book, your Instagram,
Yeah,
because
for
I'm
sure.
sure people want to know more after this.
For sure, yeah. At Aubrey Marcus on Instagram, I'm super I'm posting every day on there, and that's a really good place to follow me. Own the Day, Own Your Life. Get that anywhere. Get it on Amazon. It's one of the top books on Audible because I read it myself. So if you want to hear me read to you like sweet lullabies,
maybe
of
like
your
some
own
post-sex,
fucking
I'll just plug
motivational.
you in and get my Aubrey on.
And but yeah, Amazon, Audible, available at Onnit, and then of course Onnit's 2 N's, ONNIT. And if you're gonna write in and ask questions about ayahuasca, it's spelled AYAHUASCA. People always spell it all kind of funky.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But again, and we talked about psychedelics. It's not for everybody. Don't everybody go rushing out there and try and get psychedelics from whoever you can get it from, because it's like psychic surgery. You want to make sure you have the right surgeon. It's at the right time, and if done correctly, it can be massively beneficial.
Awesome. And then we usually end the show with something we call the Drinking Bro of the Week, which is going to be an influential figure, someone you just care about, someone you just want to give a shout out and just appreciate they're a part of your life. And
yeah, I got to shout out my homie Kyle Kingsbury. He's become one of my best friends, and he's a mountain. He's a mountain of a dude. He's fought 8 times in the UFC. He's like a specimen of physical prowess, but he's also the most heart-forward man I've probably ever met. And that's been awesome to see someone hold the balance of he could truly kick almost anybody's ass, but he's the first person to lend a helping hand and first person to give the best hug in the room. And so shout out to him.
I mean, he didn't even know who we are, and then he opened the door for us out of his kindness. He's like, "Do you guys need to get in there? Let me
Nicest
open
guy.
that door." I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be really nice because that guy can beat my ass with a pinky." So.
Yeah, and he runs the Onnit podcast too, so they dive a lot into biohacks and health. And
nice.
And my podcast, Aubrey Marcus podcast, that covers a lot of psychology, philosophy, some spirituality. We go a lot deeper into all that.
Awesome.
And we'll put all the links to that too during or in
the
the
podcast
episode,
I did with
so.
Tim Kennedy. For those of you who are in service and know who Tim Kennedy is, he's one of the baddest motherfuckers on
He's
planet.
a very close friend of ours.
I love the podcast I did with Tim. So if you want to dive into something fun, I recommend that one.
Oh yeah, gonna
Awesome.
have to.
And so the owners of Black Rifle, man, we're huge fans of everything you got going on. So
Likewise.
thanks for having us up here, and
Yeah,
thanks
for
for
sure.
everything and the
Did
hospitality.
you guys
It's been
bring some
great.
coffee?
We were going to, but we decided we're just going to square you away with an awesome care package. If you
Yeah.
want
All right.
one. So-
We did bring you a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, we did
It's
bring
our
you
whiskey
some whiskey
company as well.
Yeah.
So
Irish fucking coffee is coming up. As soon as you send me some coffee. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks
Thanks
for
a
being
lot,
on the
man.
show.
All right, thanks, fam.
Cheers.